Welcome, everyone, to Stories Worth Hearing, where I get to interview beautiful women who are on a mission to create. Hi, I'm Denise Hansard, your host and your life architect. And with me, as always, I have this extra special person that I know very well. And I want to tell you about her. It's Adrien Blackwell. Welcome, Adrien.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, so let me give everybody a little bit of info on you and then we will get started. Okay. So, Adrien is a celebrity healer and she's been featured on many TV shows such as NBC News, Travel Channel, and the Bio Channel. She has a very great background in a lot of healing energies. She's a Reiki Master-Teacher, a Shamanic Healer, a Theta Healer, and a Medical Qigong student. A lot of healing modalities, which of course led her to creating her own healing modality called Ascended Healing, and also goes through Ascension Codes and the recorded healings of that. So Adrien, again, welcome, and I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. And so as I know you, and I know your background, and it started out to where you were kind of being told to deny your gifts as a child, because you do have certain gifts as a celebrity healer, et cetera, and everything like that, and how you started out. But tell us a little bit about that. And kind of in the midst of telling us about there, just share some stories and tell us how you got through it and what made you decide to do what you're doing today.
So as a child, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and it's so funny when I have people write me back when they read my bio and they're like, get, what I was going through. But you're told that if you get psychic, information, that it's the devil talking to you, it's demons that are giving you the information. There's no way that we as people could be psychics, even though that's what Christian religion is really based on, is prophets and making predictions. And so it didn't really quite make sense. But when you're 4 or 5 years old, you kind of listen to what you're being told. But I remember at a very young age questioning things. I
Yes.
don't know how, but I was questioning things because nothing made sense to me. And so, if your house is haunted, it means you're probably doing really good work, and the devil is after you to try to get you to stop, or you're a bad person. I'm like, I'm confused. I grew up very, very, very confused because of this. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, which one is it? Because you can't give me both stories, right? So I just remember growing up very, very, very confused about it all.
Yeah. Okay.
I
So
I
stop
don't
just a minute. Stop just a minute. Because I think the one thing that people may be going, what? I thought she was a healer. She's also psychic. Yes, everyone. One of her beautiful gifts is being psychic, being in touch with herself and with her guides. And that started when you were 4 and 5 years old.
Well, I haven't really talked about being psychic yet, but that's just what they told me. This is how I grew up, and this is the information that I was given. And so, it was this idea that anything that happens that isn't in the structure of what you've been taught is bad and it's demonic. And that was really terrifying to me. So at an early age, there was no idea of being psychic. And I don't know if that was protection on my end or I just didn't really know what being psychic was. But if I did see something in the future, which isn't separate from healing. But if you do see something in the future, to me, it was common sense. It's just common sense. Like if I know it, you know it. I wasn't old enough to understand that there was a difference. And so I can't say that I thought I was bad or I thought I was demonic or anything else because of that. I just knew that if anything like that happened that I could associate with what they were telling me, I was a very bad person. So I wanted to stay away from that. And mind you, I did grow up in a very haunted house. So I was like, the devil is after me because I'm good or because I'm bad. You just don't know. But it is very traumatizing as a child.
Mhm.
And but I equate the religion that I grew up in with giving me an ability to reason. They had this book called Reasoning with the Scriptures. And
Mm.
so they were telling you how to read the Bible and reason for yourself what it means, which is very rare. Usually this is what it means. Take it at, third person value and move on with your life, right?
Yeah.
So there's a separation from that. And so I started to reason that this wasn't the religion for me. I started to reason that none of this makes any sense. And how is your religion based off of something? And then you're saying it's wrong. And I had asked my mom about it. And
Mm.
what's fascinating about this whole thing is my mother said the reason she wasn't into other religions and she went to being a Jehovah's Witness was because she had asked the pastor something and he was like, "Oh, we don't even talk about that part of the Bible. Like it doesn't matter." And she was like, "Oh no, like that doesn't work." So here I am asking my mom some similar type questions, and she was just like, "Oh, well," and she didn't really have an answer for what I was asking her.
Mm.
And so I remember my mom's story as well of disconnecting when she wasn't getting answers and she wasn't giving me answers. They didn't make sense. And so I was able to go, okay, so mom disconnected, disconnecting. So- and it doesn't take away from the fear because you still have to work through the fear of what if they're right and
Mm.
I'm wrong? I don't feel that way, but what if? What if that what if is so scary and so terrifying
Yeah,
on so many levels. And so
definitely.
I really had to work through that for years to
Mm.
get to where I am right now. But that's how I did it, is I just kept reasoning. I have to think for myself. I have to think for myself.
Yeah, so in that reasoning and the what if, you kind of went down the whole essence of what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Because these voices inside my head or my guides directed me or whatever you called it at that time, um, you just felt like it was what was you were supposed to do and everybody was doing it. And so you went down the healing modality. I know the Reiki portion and shamanic healing, et cetera, and everything like that. But tell us about how that impacted your life on getting
Actually,
all of the guidances. Yeah.
actually moving into the healing work,
Yeah.
well, it impacted my life because I didn't purposely go down that route. I was just open
Yeah.
to the information. I was open to learning something different than what my parents were telling me with the idea that maybe they weren't right, which is very scary for any child to move out of, is that your parents could be wrong because you're taught that they're right and that's what's going to keep you alive. So it's going to keep
Mhm.
you fed and a roof over your head, right? And so yes, very terrifying to do that, but I was willing to. And so because of my willingness, I had things that kind of unfolded in front of me that I just said yes to, even though they were terrifying. And
Mm.
they were what felt like out of my control. I didn't realize I was being guided. And so because I kept saying yes, it made an impact on my life because something changed. I could think more for myself without the fear. I
And
started seeing miraculous healings being done on people and I'm like, isn't this what they said Jesus was doing? This is fascinating because Jesus always said, when I grew up reading the Bible, you can do as I do and more.
Mhm.
So I'm like, so that's actually true. Because it's fascinating to me that even though I was taught that and I read it in the Bible, I was not taught that that was true in the real world. That was denied. And so it was all of a sudden I was like, that's actually a true statement. Okay, so this is very interesting on what I want to accept and what I need to deny, and that I really have to use discernment, which is just a lot of fear. But every time I moved past a fear, something miraculous would happen. My life would change. I would become happier. And I
Mm.
would say the number one thing that I've ever done in my life that created the most happiness was walking through my fears.
Mm. So tell us about one of those
My
fears that
fears?
you walk through. Yeah.
Well, as I have been saying the whole time, is literally
Mhm.
looking at what I've been taught, the fact that I could be wrong, but I'm still willing to do it. That is the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life.
And you
And
still
so,
do it. You still go through
and
those
I still
moments.
do it.
Yeah.
I still do it to this day.
We all do.
Never stops. It never stops. And you can't stop because you're always going to come up against another fear that you might have gotten when you were 4 and didn't even know it. You know how many
Right.
programs we've had since that age? So
Mhm.
I would honestly say it doesn't matter what fear I told you about. Nothing was as terrifying as that.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So as you continued just opening yourself up, saying yes, it's kind of like that. I can't remember who it was that said yes every day, said yes to everything came along the who wrote the book, et cetera, and all like that. But that was what they did for a whole year. I think it was Shonda Rhimes, but I can't remember who it was. But as you continued saying yes, and the opportunity showed up, did you ever not take one?
Yes, absolutely. And the way that that works is I was so accustomed to saying no.
Mhm.
I grew up in school saying, if somebody said, hey, I have a Christmas gift for you, I said, no, I can't take it. It was
Mm.
scary, it was terrifying, it was embarrassing, but I got used to it.
Yeah.
And so I got used to walking through life going, that's wrong, I'm not allowed to do that. And so no was actually more comfortable than saying yes.
Mm.
And so my practice was to say yes first, and then I get to use discernment. Is that really the right path for me? Is this really something that I should be doing? Okay, there's a fear there. Is it fear, or should I really not be doing this? And I had to ask myself those questions so I could learn the difference between getting maybe like an intuitive input
Right.
versus fear.
Yeah.
And so, when I sat down and got quiet enough and asked myself those questions, I would actually be led in the direction of, okay, yes, you're supposed to be doing this, or actually, no, this is a fear, but it's also a no. And then I could go back and change my mind. And that was a big thing too, because I was raised to believe that you have to be really reliable. I mean, my mother, didn't matter how sick she was go to work.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what her children need at home, she was going to work, right? So I learned that you had to be really reliable. And so changing my mind, talk about a fear.
Yes.
Changing my mind, oh my God, especially if it involves somebody else. Like if I made a commitment to you to be on this show today, and then I was like, you know what? It really, when I sat down with it, it doesn't serve me, Denise. It just doesn't. Before I would have been horrified. Like, I can't do that. I'm going. But with time and practice, I would have been like, I need to be honest as soon as possible because it's coming to me that this isn't a good idea. Then I wouldn't have done it. But
Mm-hmm.
my first inkling would have been yes, because I'm programming myself to say yes first because it's a more uncomfortable thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And that's why you continue to do the work that you're doing in the healing modality. And guys, she is phenomenal at healing. I'm not kidding you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways there was never a separation, because as a healer,
Mhm.
you need to be able to dig into somebody's psyche. You
Yeah.
need to be able to see the stories that they don't remember. Because if I said, hey, Denise, we have to have all your childhood memories, you have to remember everything to heal, you'd be like, well, screw this. I'm not going to you. I can't remember all that, right?
I have pushed that so far down. I am not going to
Exactly.
cover that.
So all of those years of training myself to be intuitive, to listen to the intuition versus my fears, to listen to guidance, to listen to my gut feeling, to listen to the voices when they come every now and then, and realize that because it's scary at first, but you realize you're not schizophrenic, that there are spirits on the other side and they are guiding you, and you allow that in. All of a sudden, the healing world takes on a whole another level. And before I even realized really that I was psychic, I was doing the healing work. I was led to do the healing work, which I thought I was going to use for my friends and family. I had no idea I was going to become a professional healer. And when I actually got the information, I argued with my guides. No, that's not happening. I am not. And here I'm learning all these different modalities, not thinking about this, by the way. This is just for my friends and family. This is just for myself. This isn't going to be my profession. And they're like, you're a healer. And I'd have psychics come up to me and be like, did you know you're a healer? Oh, I have certifications for it, but I'm not a healer. No.
I just do it
And
friends and
so,
family only.
right. And so finally saying yes to even that aspect of life
Mhm.
was terrifying, but the most rewarding yes I've ever done.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely the best.
yeah, I love that. Did you ever just want to walk away and say, I'm done, totally done with this?
With the healing?
Yeah,
No, never.
good.
Because I had no attachment to it other than no, I'm not a healer. I had no attachment as it being a career or making money, or the fact that as a healer, one of the things that you come across that's kind of terrifying is if somebody has an issue and you feel like you can't fix it.
Mm,
And you have to realize that you're not in 100% control. They're not 100% in control, right? That this is a joint effort. They have to show up, they have to be willing, and then you have to show up and you have to be willing.
yeah.
And if they're ready, they will heal. And if they're not, you have to be okay with where they are. Just be
Mhm.
okay with it. And that took years to overcome. And so that was the only attachment I would have. But if I'm not doing it professionally, I don't have that attachment. So there was never a part of me that wanted to walk away from the healing, because I'm like, I'm not a healer. What do you mean? I'm a psychic. Thank you very much. And the illusion, because I'm like doing television and radio as a psychic, like this is obviously meant to be. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And then as a healer, I had already faced a lot of those fears because I had been doing healing work for so long, just for, my family. I mean, there was a point where I thought my daughter was going to die.
Mm,
And her tongue was swollen, her throat was swollen, her face was swollen, and her eyes were swollen shut. And I was like, if I can't do something about this in the next few minutes, I need to rush my daughter to the hospital. So I put my hands on her face. I wasn't looking at her face. I put my hands and completely covered her face while she was asleep. And I was like, I'm sending this healing energy. If there's somebody out there that can help me send this energy, please do. This is the moment I need to see it work for my friends and family, because this is what I said I've been using it for, right? About 3 minutes later, I feel my hands are like really wet. I lift them up and my daughter's face is normal and her breathing is back to normal. Right? So all of a sudden, again, I didn't have that fear that if I'm working on somebody, it's not going to work. It was the fear that I might lose my daughter and I'm going to have to rush her to the hospital if this doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I was already, by the time I became a professional healer, I'd already looked at those and had managed those and had to face those fears on a whole new level. So I was ready by the time I became a healer. I honestly was just ready.
Yeah. I
I haven't
love
looked back since.
it. How long have you been doing it?
For 22 years, professionally for 10.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
good. And I love that you claim that you were doing it for 22, but then you decided to become professional.
Exactly. It was more for people who needed it at the time. And it's interesting too, because I'd be doing a psychic reading. Let's say somebody broke up, because this is a true story, like something that actually happened, but somebody had broke up with someone. And I know how devastating that is. I've been through it. It's not easy. And sometimes it can take a year, sometimes it can take more, depending on how long you've been together. And I was on with her on the phone. She's crying, and I'm giving her this reading, and I'm just like, no, there's something better for her. And that's the energy that she needs to receive, is that there's something better for her. And she told me since the day, and this had only happened maybe 3 weeks prior to us talking, she said the day that we started talking, the pain, the emotional pain went away and it never came back. She's like, I didn't miss him. I felt like there was something better for me out there. And I was like, how is that possible? And then when I started doing the healing work, I was like, I've been a healer the whole time. That's where I started. Of course, I was doing healing work as I was doing the psychic readings and didn't even know it. Like, had no idea that this is what I was doing. So when my guides are like, you're a healer, I was like, no, I was already doing the work.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we could talk forever, and I like to keep these kind of short and brief. Um, so what I'm hearing is you have to just be open to listening. Do you feel like everybody can kind of hear their guides?
No,
Okay, tell me more about that.
the reason is because we all have different gifts. So
Mm,
you might have the gift of knowing, you know, when something's not right. You
yeah.
know when something is right. You get that pull, you get that inner knowing, like you're the source of all knowledge, right? Where I might not get that sense of knowing, I might get a voice that says, this is the direction you need to go on. And somebody might, they might have a physical pain that says, no, I can't do that because I'm in physical pain. But other ones get more of an elation or joy in their physical bodies. And so we all just have these different feelings that come. We have different information. And so I would never want to water down somebody's gifts by saying, hey, we all have the same gift, because we don't. But we all have gifts.
I
And
like the
so
way you
therefore, yeah, it's really about just receiving your gifts and understanding them, and stop looking at somebody else's and say, I want to do that. What are my gifts?
I love that. And asking so that you can just allow
Exactly.
however it comes in, whatever it is, whether you feel it, you see it, you hear it, you know it, it does not matter. And say yes. Because
Yeah, and I would just like to make the point that when you say allow, I would like to give my clarification as to what allow is. Allowing doesn't mean you're not going to have resistance, because I had resistance the whole time. Allowing was a simple idea that when the time comes, I'm willing to say yes.
Mm,
Even if I say no first, ultimately I'm going to say yes. And that was a clarity within myself that I made years and years and years ago, because I said no plenty of times when I should have been saying yes. But I will tell you, when the opportunity finally came to my face
mhm.
and I really checked in with those emotions and I was like, I have to say yes, that I'm going to say yes no matter how afraid I am. That is allowing. And I think there's a misconception that allowing is like, okay, I'm just going to say yes and I'm not going to have any fear when I say yes and there's not going to be any resistance. But I said no first. Period.
I love that. I love that definition and how you expanded it. So, as we're tying this up, I'd like for you to share maybe one more tidbit with everyone and then tell them how they can connect with you if they'd like to.
I honestly feel as part of this conversation that I think you asked the right questions for me to give everybody what they really need to know within this conversation. If there was anything that I was going to add to it, it's be kind and gentle with yourself when you're trying to make decisions, when you're trying to figure out the next path to go. It's not perfect. It is terrifying. And sometimes we're moving through trauma when we're doing it. And so being kind to yourself is ultimately the most important thing you could ever do, because that too is the art of allowing. And then if anybody wants to reach out to me, they can reach out to adrienblackwell.com, or they can Google me, very simple. ask@adrienblackwell.com is my email.
That sounds wonderful. Adrien, thank you so much for being with us today. And everybody, thank you for coming back. I love being able to share these stories with you for women who are on a mission to create. So please come back again. Please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you again on Stories Worth Hearing.